In case you forgot, here we are. Somewhere in the middle of COVID.
1 month into COVID. It seems like a year, but we're 1 month into COVID.
Yeah. If this doesn't speak to just the validity of like that which is the toxic nature of the evangelical church movement, that the people involved live in these suspended states of reality where months seem like days, days seem like months. There's things that you think you never did, but it's a regular occurrence. There's regular occurrences that they convince you never happened. I mean, like, this is it. Like, this part of the podcast is going to be in such bite-sized chunks. Like, we're almost going to like just talk about a day or a week or a couple of weeks within each episode, because there's just so many things that when you unpack it, and it's why we say when you see it, you can't unsee it. Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
It's a place there shouldn't be abuse. Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims to.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through toxic church culture and spiritual abuse, all while finding healing in the end.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
When we last left, I had walked into the office and I was going to quit my job. We had a guy come into the church. I was scared. I felt like my very valid emotions were dismissed. And I had reached the point where I was like, you know what? I just can't do this anymore. I can't give and give and give of myself. And so if I'm going to be expected to give of myself in ministry, then I'm going to give myself in ministry, and I am going to quit my job. And so This is where it gets really tricky, because when I was hired, I was told the website, the marketing, all of that kind of stuff, that is your ministry, because you've been doing that for years for free. That is your ministry. Your job, well, originally I was hired to be Tom's assistant, and that lasted all of about like a week and a half. And so
it was like my word was going to be gatekeeper.
Yeah. And so like whatever.
I mean, there is a job title for that assistant, I guess.
But I never had a job title. Like even the woman who like was, Lori did all of our payroll and everything, like, she didn't even know what my job title was. Like, I had no job title. And so we ended up just like, I'm a church administrator, because there was no, well, you're going to be hired as
administrative thing.
Yeah, as the pastor's assistant. And then it we've talked about this before on the podcast where like, Tom would be talking about something in a sermon and be like, well, that's why we hired Amanda. And I'd be like, why am I hired now? What is my job now? Like, and so when it was convenient for him, all of the social media and website and marketing, all of that was my job when it was convenient for him. But, behind closed doors, I was getting yelled at that that's not my job. That's my ministry. And I should be focusing on ministry things. So because Tom put me in the sound booth, that was my job. So I couldn't complain about coming in and recording with him in the dead of night during COVID. I couldn't complain about having to show up and go through hours of stuff. I couldn't complain about, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. So I literally spent, like, when I say I spent 100 hours on YouTube trying to learn how to be in a sound booth, like I did. I took online trainings and all of those things, and that was my job. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to quit my job. Like, because this is what's causing me the most stress, having all of these people call me, and you're handing out my phone number to people like it's candy because you don't want to have to deal with them. And now we went through this situation and you scream at me about my faith. Okay, I'm going to quit my job. Then I can focus on the stuff that actually brings me joy. So that was my plan. Is I'm going to walk in and I'm going to, everything I just said, that's what I'm going to tell him. And I get myself hyped up, right? And I walk in, and it is a Monday. So it is just Tom and Barbara Jean in the office typically. But also around this time, Charlotte had started like needing more and more information about stuff. And this started like right before COVID. And so she would always call and ask for information and stuff. I think she was bugging Tom at home and asking him questions at home about things. And he was annoyed. And so he told her if she wants to know, then she needs to bring herself into the office, is what I think happened.
I could see that. I mean, I can't verify it, but I could see that being, I don't know, just show up.
Yeah. And so she started coming in on Mondays. So
I could also see like her not getting the answer she wants, because he'd be like, I don't know, and just see her being like, well, fine, I'm gonna show up then.
Yeah.
I could see that
there was tension. Like, she did not go in his office on Mondays. Like, if she had to ask a question, she would come ask me or Barbara Jean, and if we didn't know, then we would have to go ask him and then report back to her. Like, they didn't talk to each other.
Yeah.
So you could tell he did not like her being there.
Yeah. But
I could also see him being like, well, just come in there. And then she shows up, and then he's like, well, crap, I don't want you here.
Right.
Like,
it's just totally the dynamic. I mean, yeah,
yes.
Totally. 100%.
For whatever reason, she is coming in the office. So it's just the three of them. I walk in, Barbara Jean and Charlotte are standing right at the desk when you first walk in, and they're going through the mail. And so I walk in, and I guess the look on my face, Charlotte knew. And I said, good morning. And they're like, good morning. And I said, is Tom in his office? And they said, yeah. And I said, okay. And so I start to walk back there, and Charlotte like kind of like pushes me into the back office, like where all of us girls had our office all together. She kind of pushes me in there, and she's like, what do you need to talk to Tom for? And I said, it's just important. I just really need to have a conversation with him. Barbara Jean comes, bopping back, and she's like, oh, and here's the communication cards that I printed them all out from email. And I'm like, girl, you don't need to print. Why are we printing them? Who's going to see them? It's just us here. And so she's going through all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah. Why don't you give those to Charlotte? And I am like, I'm going to go talk to Tom. Charlotte grabs me by my shirt and literally drags me like a child down the hallway and into the pantry. And she shuts the door and locks it. And I'm like, what the hell? And she starts crying. And she's like, you can't do this. And I'm like, I can't do what? And she's like, you're going to quit, and you can't do this. You can't do this to us. We are trying so hard to hold this together. And, we're we're going to get back to how it was, and it'll be fine. It's just this, this pandemic, and it's just this stuff. And it's, everyone is scared right now, and no one is acting rationally. And, I know we've put a lot on you, but you just need to hold your ground and run your race and, stand firm and you're standing on holy ground, and can you feel the Lord? He's here, and he wants you to stay, and he wants you to persevere. And think of any Bible verse that you could think of perseverance and, steadfastness, and all of this crap is all being spewed at me. Then she starts reciting Psalms 31, which we all know exactly how I feel about that. And so
you got it all. You got the whole book.
I got the whole thing. And so she is bawling. I have never seen her. I've seen her get misty eyed, and oh, that's so touching, in right. Christian women's circles. But she is ugly crying.
Yeah.
Ugly crying.
Yeah.
And begging me not to do this.
I really think, hold on, let's before we get too far into that story.
Yeah.
Number one, if you're oh my gosh, how did you know you were going to quit? Without you saying it. They have this so down. They
can recognize it.
They recognize all of the
smelled it on me when I walked in the door.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, as someone who has managed people, you do become, it's not mind reading. It's not, you learn you can spot every subtle, and it's usually subconscious. People start saying things, doing things, and acting in certain ways that they don't even realize that they're acting in, that you recognize that they're on their way out. You just know. And so that I was oh, that surprises me, but it doesn't surprise me. But I also know that this pandemic time really did freak Charlotte out a little bit. I know that there was a level of cool and calm and on the outside, put on a good face. But I will say that within the more private side of, I feel like there really was this huge underlying fear for a lot of things. And so I'm sure the entire workings of the church dissolving and this, I feel like they put on a really good show publicly, and a not as good of a show, but a little bit of a show privately, but enough that you could really sense the underlying tensions and fear that were going on during this time. And so then I'm sure, yeah, you quitting was and I think they were getting it from all sides.
Well, and she even reminded me of remember when, everything started happening, and I said, if you leave the church, Tom, he's gonna we're just gonna have to close the church, because then he's just gonna know that God's not here anymore. Well, he said that about Corey and Topanga too, and they were gone.
Yeah.
And so I did later on, I did kind of mention to her at some point of how did you know I was gonna quit?
Yeah.
Because I never actually said it. She said it to me, and I just confirmed.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, the Holy Spirit had you on my heart. And, all the the Lord told me. Yeah. Yeah.
It's how human beings work.
So she begs me not to quit. She tells me, I'm going to talk to Tom. And I was like, no, don't talk to Tom. Cause at this point, I'm you cannot show weakness to Tom. So even if you are falling apart, and it's you present that nope, I got this. I am all about it. I am all in. I have all.
I don't want another lecture about my faith, because I was scared that guy was an active shooter. So God forbid I don't have faith, and I just got lectured about it.
Yeah. So I'm no, don't talk to Tom. I'm fine. Maybe I'm just kind of burnout. Maybe I just, it's been a lot. It's been a really, really busy couple of weeks, and I just, now that we're able to do things and, I'm not having to upload sermons and we can live stream, like, I'm really hoping this will take some stuff off my plate. And yes, oh, that would be great, honey. Yes. In her, Charlotte Fundy voice of like, yes. And, just know we all appreciate you, and the Lord sees what you are doing, and you are storing up those treasures in heaven. And one day you will have all of your rewards. And, I know you're not doing this for the praise, and I know you're not doing this for recognition. I know you're doing this for God, and just know God sees you, even if you feel like no one else here does. So let's just look at that phrase for a minute. I'm saying I'm done. I am overwhelmed. I'm burnt out. I'm done. And she completely flips it of like, oh, but I know you're not doing it for people. I know, like, trying to like remind me like, oh no, you're taking your eyes off of Jesus. You're starting to sink in the water. Like, put your eyes back on the Lord. You're not doing this for yourself. You're not doing this for people. And if you are a true disciple, the disciples never got burned out. Could you imagine if the disciples in Scripture were burnt out? We would never have church today. Christianity wouldn't exist because they had to work so hard in the beginning. Think of the apostles and think of Paul and all he faced. So if you are truly connected to the Lord and to the Holy Spirit, you will not get burnout. And so I know that's not you. I know that you're not doing this for the world. You're doing this for God, and God sees you. Never mind, your husband treats me like crap and no one else seems to care. And I feel like I'm getting the shit kicked out of me every single day by these people who are my quote unquote spiritual family. That's fine. I got treasures in heaven, baby.
Treasures in heaven. I'm here for the retirement plan. Oh, don't get me started. But you know what though? Like, I think we should talk about this concept of the world.
Yeah.
On Patreon.
Oh yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
You were just talking about that, and I'm like, oh, I would love to go and dive into a little rabbit hole about like that whole concept and like this whole idea of like using these people that we have moments of their life captured, right? And we try to rationalize the moments that we have captured in this book as their day-to-day life, but we don't know what they did day to day, like every single day. Like we don't know the times that, I mean, if you look at even the things that we say Paul wrote that were in the Bible and some of the laments, okay, well, that comes from a place that's not listed in, like, you get to the lament because the day-to-day struggle had you curled up in the fetal position in the corner. But we ignore that and we turn the lament into this beautiful thing. Like, no, like it came from a place of reality of what happened day to day. So we should totally dive into that.
Yeah. No, I think that's great for this week's Patreon. I agree. I agree.
I got some opinions.
Yeah. So I fall for the gaslighting. I fall for the BS, and I feel bad that I made Charlotte cry.
Yeah.
So
did you quit your job? No.
I did not quit my job that day. But that Thursday night, I am informed by Charlotte, because now that we can have 10 people or less, we can have Thursday night service.
Yeah. Great.
And so we're back to having Thursday night services. And I am told that Barry and Bill Nye the Color Guy are going to be doing Thursday night services, because it's a lot for Tom to have to, be a pastor of an online church. I don't know what the hell that man was doing for the online church, because I was doing 99% of, he was doing the same thing he did every week. He stood on that stage and he talked into a microphone.
Yeah. And we need these men who are in the eldership training. And I really feel like during that time, that whole whopping 48 hours, because I mean, honestly, like when you and I timelined this out, we were convinced that these things happened weeks apart.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, hours within these things happen.
It blew our mind when we went through, and I mean, we're looking at Facebook, and praise God, I was a lonely, desperate person and put everything on Facebook
and literally went through the YouTube feed, and those dates of those sermons are still recorded and were still available in the playlist of YouTube. And we went, I swore, and we'll get into this here in just a minute, but I swore one thing happened. You swore another thing happened, and the proof was in the recordings. And we both went, what? But, because we have the whole eldership thing. So we got to bring these men up, right? But I feel like because you were told that Bill Nye the Color Guy and Barry were going to take over Thursdays, I was told that Bill Nye the Color Guy was going to step in because everybody believed that he was supposed to be a pastor. And so I feel like he was used as the bait.
Oh, no. He was 100% the pawn of if we just put Barry on stage, people are going to freak out.
Yeah, because nobody knows who Barry is.
Yeah. So we're going to prime the pump, so to speak, and we're going to let Bill Nye the Color Guy do one.
Yeah. And
now we can let Barry come into and be like, well, we're just going to go through all the men in eldership training. Every man in eldership is going to have their turn. Well, I can tell you right now, it was just those two.
Yeah, because I remember all of those things being said. And this is where it gets wonky with how you and I remember these things. I remember being told that for Thursday nights, the men of eldership were going to start taking turns preaching. And we were starting with Bill Nye the Color Guy, right? And I remember being okay with that. I also remember later on being told that it didn't because not everybody did, they're not called to preach. Turns out just, we already know Bill Nye the Color Guy is called to preach, right? So, and then Barry, well, for me, that didn't come up till later on in the timeline.
Yeah.
But initially we have this Thursday service and Bill Nye the Color Guy preaches, and everybody's like, yes, because we all love when he gets up and talks, right? I mean, it's a little crazy, but we love it, right?
Yeah. He is, that's why we named it Bill Nye the Color Guy. He's into the color, presenting the gospel in the colors. And I'm not kidding you. Every single one of his sermons had the gospel presentation laid out, and 99% of them had it in colors. But we named him Bill Nye because he is kind of dorky, but he's entertaining.
Yeah. And he has a good heart. He really is I don't know that he would do anything to harm anyone, ever. Yeah. But he also, along with that, doesn't always think through the things that he does. No. So you're that was kind of, you probably shouldn't have done that. Yeah. But he's a sweet guy. And he was refreshing.
Yeah.
Compared to Tom. I'll go sit on a Thursday and really almost listen to anybody to not have to listen to Tom talk one more time, right? Yeah. To get Sunday Sermon Part 2. Please. And we really had already established after Young Gun, that rift that happened with going deeper into the Bible, people didn't want to let that go. And so it offended Tom, and his feelings were hurt because he didn't know how to go deep down and dive. He would actually have to research and want to learn new stuff. And then he just liked his, pre-printed sermons on a Sunday for the seeker friendly crowd. And And he tried. And I really feel like that's why it was like, oh, he has so much. He can't do Thursdays because he can't go deep into the Bible. He can only do surface level. And sorry, Tom, I know you're offended by that, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't. You know what's in black and white on the paper, and sorry, let's just call it like it is. And so, yeah, I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
The colors never bothered me. I was just like entertained and refreshed. So it's all good.
I was mostly annoyed with like the freaking rocks that we had, like the big ass boulders that we had spray painted that we couldn't get rid of.
I know.
Yes.
I know, because it's your type A personality.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing wrong with, like, some of the stuff where you're like, and I'm like, I totally get as you. Like, I get it. Where me, I'm like, didn't even notice. Felt great.
This is when Bill Nye the Color Guy is preaching. So we are in like the end of April. Okay.
Yeah.
But we are told eventually all the guys are going to go through a turn. And after Bill Nye the Color Guy is going to be Barry.
Yeah.
And so a part of this is to help these men, because they are going to be leaders of our body. They are working on, things in their homes, and they're working on things, personally, to make sure that they are in alignment with scripture of what God calls a leader to be. And so we need to get Miss America a ministry, because it is not healthy for a woman to not have a ministry.
Yeah.
I personally think it's because if the women didn't have the church as a distraction, they would start having opinions and thoughts for themselves, and we can't have that.
We can't have that.
Yes. So we need to get Miss America a ministry. Miss America is a homeschool mom. So I do know at one point she said because supposedly they flipped houses.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure.
I don't know. Let's lay it all out. All the things that they said they did at this point that we thought they had done. Right? So he had a business.
He said he was a doctor.
Yeah, he said he was a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a business selling supplements.
Mm-hmm.
We know that one. They're going to be missionaries in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
She homeschooled.
Mm-hmm.
She flipped houses.
Yeah. But if you looked at their online presence, they're like, we've been doing this for years. Okay, well, I see one video online where you flipped one house and it took you 3 years to sell it.
Yeah. And then, so there was that. And then she supposedly ran their website for their business.
Yeah.
Which we then found out, actually, they hired somebody to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, did they not know that you could look that up on the bottom of the website?
Yeah. So it's all of this stuff. So we need to get her a ministry. So because she flipped houses, she wanted to redecorate the whole church. Well, we had just redone the stage, and that was a lot. And remember just a couple years before that, we painted classrooms, and that about broke Tom, that we had any other color other than beige on some classroom walls. So she wanted to repaint the lobby and all of that. And I was like, girl, I'm with you 100%. That's not going to happen. So she begged to have that be her ministry. And that got shut down instantly. And so it was decided, because she, even though they had not gone through 101, 201, 301, she takes a 310 interview with Tom.
Yeah.
So she skips the line and does a 310 interview with Tom. And she mentions in this interview that she runs, and it was an astronomical amount, something like 30 some Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Tom doesn't know what the hell a Facebook group is.
No.
He doesn't know what it is.
No.
So he hears Facebook. And so he's like, oh, you can help Amanda.
Yeah.
Which works out great, because Amanda just made Charlotte cry. So I know, even though I told Charlotte not to say anything to Tom, I know she said something to him like,
Yeah.
hey, you need to lay off. You need to be nice. Because then he goes back to his, I'm getting screamed at over the internet not working great. I'm getting screamed at over, why can these people not access the sermon? What's wrong with you? Why can't they do this? Because she's 97 and she doesn't have the internet, Tom. That's why. Like, I can't fix that.
Right.
And so, like, where's your faith? You thought you were going to die. If God wanted you to get shot in this church, it would have happened. Buck up. So I go from that to now we're back to, oh, sweetie. Oh, thank you, sweetie. And he's thanking me for every little thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she talked to you.
Yeah.
And said, like, she's
Amanda's
on the brink.
Burnt out and she's going to leave.
Yep.
Like,
her toes are over the ledge. She's going to jump. Like,
you've gone too far.
Yep. Back off a little bit. And so he hears Facebook and he decides, oh, Amanda is, on the verge of losing it. So let's get her some help. So I am told on this Thursday night that Miss America is going to come into the office next week. And I'm supposed to talk to her about social media because she is going to help us. So I'm like, okay, so like, what do you want to do? She comes in this next week. I'm like, what are your thoughts? What do you want to do? And she's like, well, I have all of these Facebook groups and we hold meaningful discussions and all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, we have Facebook groups too. Like we have a women's ministry group and we have a youth group and we have a children's ministry group. But typically the leaders of those ministries are, run those groups. Like, so, if you want to be more active in the children's group, you need to talk to Brandi about that. Maybe she would want you to post, like some, prayers to say with your kids or some content or something. I mean, like you homeschool, I'm sure you have a bunch of, resources and stuff that maybe you can post to help other parents, especially staying home. This could be a really great resource because there's parents who have never had to help their kids with school before.
Yeah.
And now they're having to help. This could be a good resource. No, I don't want to do children's ministry.
Okay, stop.
Okay.
I want to go overseas to the Philippines.
To help children.
To help deaf children learn to communicate through sign language. I have a heart. We're going to have a school in the Philippines for children. This is like, I listen to the entire bleeding heart pouring out of my heart for children and opening a school in the Philippines. But you don't want to be in children's ministry?
Well, because helping the white women in Colorado who don't want to have to homeschool their kids and now are stuck with their children doesn't look as great on a Facebook post as look at me in the middle of all of these other colored children. Look, me, white savior, Miss America is helping them. They were never able to communicate and look what I'm doing for them. Praise Jesus. So she doesn't want to do children's.
Right. No children's.
No children's. She doesn't want to. And then she was very quick to say, and teenagers freak me out. Okay, well, girl, you got like a whole herd of kids. You know they're going to be teenagers one day, right? Like,
right.
It's coming. But okay, teenagers freak you out. Fine. Okay. If you want to do stuff for women's ministry, we've been doing women's ministry live. Hey, you want to jump in? Do you want to do a women's ministry live? Do you want to, like, we've had women who have written devotionals and like prayer journals and stuff like that in the past. Like, is that something you're interested in? No. I don't want to do groups. Okay, well then why did you lead with I moderate 37 Facebook groups? Like what? Okay, like what do you want to do? Well, I feel like your content is very surface and there is not very much sharing of the gospel in it at all. And I was like, okay, that's not the point of our channel. Like I've spent well over a decade curating our brand and our messaging and all of this. And so like we are very much like we are here for the community. Fun. We're trying to draw the people in. We are our Facebook, our social media presence is not there as like biblical supplement for those who attend. That's why you join a Bible study. That's why
what all those groups are for.
Yeah. And so this is very like, just like a Sunday morning, we're seeker friendly. So is our online presence on social media.
If you want to go deeper, if you want to do those things, those are done on a more personal level.
Yes. So, I'm like, hey, if you want to do some posts, like here is my posting guidelines. And I kind of like, present her with like our brand and our messaging and all of this kind of stuff. And I said, and then this is what we use. And so all of our looks are the same. And she's like, well, and another thing I noticed is you don't have like a watermark. You have nothing on your posts that say that it's from Come As You Are. And so I don't know. It just seems kind of weird that you wouldn't put your logo or a watermark on there. And so she said it in a way of like, I feel like you're just stealing images from other people and posting them as yourself. And I was like, okay. She didn't say it, but like that's kind of like her implication. And I said, well, I belong to a collective. One of the things I took upon myself was I joined this collective for people who do social media for churches. And it was like a mentoring collective. So I had a mentor who was mentoring me, and then I mentored someone else. So I had a 62-year-old lady from the middle of BFE, Kansas, who was the secretary at her church, and they decided they needed Facebook, and she's trying to learn how to use Facebook, and she has no idea. So part of this collective is I entered this agreement. And so I can take content from my mentor. So anything that is not branded with their church stuff on it, or I can't take pictures of their members, but any like image, graphic, anything they put out there that doesn't have their branding on it, I can take that and I can use that content. Likewise, anything I post that I make that does not have our branding on it, the lady from Kansas can use. And so I'm like, yes, there is some things that I get from my mentor, but like part of this collective is I had to like document this is what I used and how I used it so that we just didn't have people out here stealing each other's crap, right? Yeah. And claiming it as their own. So I was like, this is how I use it. And then likewise, the lady from Kansas has to do that with that. So I don't put our logo on a lot of things because I want her to be able to use it. So anything that has our name on it or, our logo or anything like that, she can't use. But like if I just make a graphic, like a inspirational, I take a Bible verse and I turn it into a graphic, she can use that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't putting a lot of text with my images. It was basically just an image, maybe a couple little blurbs and and so she is like, well, I would really like to, make posts. And I was like, okay, yeah, like let's do a couple trial ones and then we can kind of, ease into it. I tried to get her set up with the program that we use to make our graphics.
Yeah. I want you all to remember that this lady came in guns hot, that she was an expert at all of this stuff.
Yes.
She's equal to Amanda. I just want you to hold that thought as Amanda tells the rest of the story.
She is better.
Oh, she's better than Amanda. I'm sorry. My bad.
And I am wrong, which I'm not. I don't want to say that in a way of like, who the hell is this chick? I'm the best. Like, no,
this is how she billed it to Tom. And this is how she came at you was like, I have been doing this longer than you, sweetie. And I know what's up.
Yeah.
And your stuff is garbage and everything I do is amazing. And I just want you to hold that thought while Amanda tells the rest of the story.
Yeah. So I get her set up with like the program that we use. She can't use it. And I'm like, what? Why can't you use it? She's like, this is not user friendly at all. And I said, well, they set this up so it mimics the layout of like Adobe. So like if you were to use Illustrator or Photoshop or something like that, it's very much the tools look similar. Is this how this online platform set it up to be able to be used? And so it's created just for churches. We use this because then if we use a graphic and it hits well on social media, then we could take that graphic and we can turn it into a slide, in a sermon or, a background for worship. Like this is where we get all of our worship backgrounds and all of this kind of stuff. Like, so like it's universal across the board for anything that we would want to use it for. This is how we're building our bulletins and all of this. And she's like, well, I have been doing this for a really long time and I've been doing graphics and I have never used something like this. And I'm like, okay, so like, what do you use? And she's like, well, I use a platform. So this is kind of like when Canva first came out or like first became really popular is when is like through COVID, right? So she starts talking about Canva. And so I had never heard of it. So I started looking at it and I'm like, okay, well, like we can't use, like you can't just Google an image and like make it. And she's like, no, I pay for a subscription. So I can use all the images. I was like, okay, that's fine. So then I go through all of the stuff with her. Like, okay, so, it's fine if we make one that's really like kind of feminine, but then we need to kind of balance that out. We don't want all of our stuff to be like dark and masculine, but we don't want like flowers and, all of that all the time either. We are our target demographic is 9 to 99. So we need to make content that reaches everyone within that target demographic. And so she's like, oh, no, I understand. So her first post is a woman. It's just a stock photo of a woman like cowering in fear behind a chair. And the word fear is above her big. And then she, in the text to the posts 3 paragraphs about how we don't live in fear. I was like, oh. So in your 310 interview, Tom mentioned that I was scared that the man came into church. Okay. So I was like, okay. So then, she made another one and very similar, like made a picture, a stock photo, and then, and the stock photo, again, a big long, text to go with it. So we talked on the phone and I said, like, I like your content. You're doing a great job. I gave you access to all of our pictures. So like any picture I had ever taken for the church or anyone had ever taken of an event or anything, I had in an online album. And I gave her access to that. So I was like, if you're going to do so, like I try to go through and find pictures of our own people because we're trying to show people like these are our people. We're trying to give people an accurate representation of who we are and, what we're trying to give them a glimpse into. If you were to walk in our doors, we are the same people on our Facebook page that you're going to see when you walk in our building.
Yeah.
And, so I prefer not to use stock images unless it's like clearly like, like the stock image of the guy standing on top of the mountain, holding his hands up in worship. And it's all like kind of just a silhouette, like, those standardized things. I said, but if it's going to show like people like sitting around in a Bible study or something like that, like we have images of our own people that we have permission to use their images for our social media. And so like, just try to, look through. I mean, like, obviously if you have a vision and you just can't find a picture for it, like, yeah, go ahead. But like, just try, And she got really upset with me. And I could tell she was upset with me, but she didn't say anything to me. She went straight to Tom and told Tom, I told her she couldn't post anymore.
Yeah.
And I said, that's not what I said.
Not what I said.
That's not what I said at all.
And that conversation's going to linger for a long time.
Yeah. And I said, I was just trying to get her to like,
come on board.
Yeah. Like if you're walking into us saying, I like what you're doing. I want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to include you on what we're doing. And again, like I'm trying to navigate all of this with this echo in the back of my head of don't be bossy.
Yeah.
Don't be bossy. You can't be bossy. You have to, you have to let her help and everything. And it wasn't that like, you're not doing it my way. It was things that like I had spent my own money and hours taking training of like, this is how you build a brand and this is how you do this. And years of being yelled at by Tom for trying to do something and he didn't like it. So I'm trying to also protect her from that.
Yeah.
And
I listen, as somebody, you and I were not friends for a very long time.
No.
And we've talked about that in the past. Like we were kept apart. We were not friends. And so it isn't the Amanda and Melissa today that I sat in that seat that she was in and was like, hey, I have these ideas and these things that I want to do for what I'm doing. And you're the person I have to go to because it has to be cohesive with what we're already doing.
Yeah.
Like that was how it was always laid out. Like you can do whatever you want. Don't burden Amanda, but also make sure you're doing what she needs you to do. Like you have to go and get the Amanda tutorial on how to do stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I sat in that chair with things and had you tell me like, that's not what we do. And this is not what, the exact same conversation. And I know for a fact, 100%, the way that your customer service of that, there's no reason anybody would have ever been offended or thought that you were bossy or not letting her do anything. Like I know firsthand, like if me, the artist who gets offended at like the shape of eggs, I mean, come on, it's like, and I didn't get offended, like to have you critique things that I've done. No, or been told like, if you just change this, then it will work. I mean, I know your level of business professionalism in that and their customer service. And I guarantee you she had no reason to be. You didn't come off like that at all. I know that 100%.
Yeah. And so I am, hauled into Tom's office and yelled at that, I need to let her help. And, all I do is I beg for years for people to help me. Well, here's someone who wants to help. And then you tell her she can't help. And I was like, I didn't tell her she couldn't help. I'm just trying to like, this is our brand. And I even tried to like, what if someone came on stage? Like, isn't this why you and Etheridge butted heads? Someone comes on stage and tries to change the vibe and the whole, like, everything about the worship team. And that's not the vibe you're going for. That's not the brand. That's not the message you want to put out there on a stage on a Sunday morning. And you got upset about that. He's like, well, I still let her do it. And I said, yes, but it wouldn't have come to blows the way it did. And we wouldn't have had that meeting if she was able to do anything she wanted to do. You were still trying to get her to see your way, see your side of it. This isn't about, I don't want help. This isn't about, you have to do it my way. I had a freaking brand kit. Like, it's not like I was just like, this is how I do it and you have to copy exactly. Like, no, I developed
the tools to be successful. She went and did her own thing.
And so if you're going to come at me and you're going to say, I have experience in this, I should be able to hand you a brand kit. And you're like, oh, here's the fonts I use. Here's the colors I use. Here's, that have our tone and our messaging in it.
Yeah.
And even with the lady in Kansas, I had been working with her to develop her own brand kit so that she wasn't just reliant on me feeding her content. She was slowly developing the confidence and the ability to be able to create content on her
Yeah.
own.
And so she could
in
take an idea that
her
you had
churches,
and turn it into her own brand. Yeah.
in her church's voice.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm like, this, you know, this is what I gave her. And I feel like if you had the level of experience that you come at me saying that you have, you should be able to take this brand kit and you should be like, yes, I can build a brand. I can build content around this brand.
Yeah.
Easily. And she wasn't able to do that.
Yeah.
So essentially, Tom tells me you have to let her post twice a week. Okay, fine. She can post twice a week. So it became, you know, Tuesdays and Thursdays were her days to post. She had to have all the access because she is a very busy mom. She is a busy mom and she just doesn't have time to sit and just create content all day, every day. And so she gives herself a couple hours a month to sit and be creative. And so she was going to create in 2 hours. She was going to create a month's worth of content and pre-schedule it. And she's like, I don't know why you're not pre-scheduling all of the content. And I was like, well, I do some, like the generic stuff. Yeah. But like, I mean, we're constantly,
hi, lady, you haven't been here long enough to know how quickly we pivot.
And then she's like, well, like, I don't understand. Like, we should know what the next sermon series is. And I'm like, yeah, we should. But
yes,
good
ma'am.
luck with that. I've been
You're
trying
correct.
for a decade. Yep. We're waiting on the Holy Spirit to tell Tom. Like, can't rush the Spirit. Where have you been? And so her and I are kind of like...
But I love how she was pitted. Like, this is what I want to say right now. Like, if you can't see the exact same formula of how she was pitted against you, like I was pitted against you, of like, you should be able to schedule the next sermon series out. Really? Like, that's my fault? It's not my fault. I don't create the sermon. Like, my hands are tied. I would if I had it. But we don't blame Tom. We blame Amanda. Why? Because Tom blames Amanda. Mm-hmm. Right? Because there's an alternative agenda going on here that none of us are aware of. But we now want to. But what we can see, and what we did know at this point, is we are giving this woman special privileges and we are catering to her because we want something.
Yeah.
And that's evident from the very beginning. And since Tom has no idea, when you go in and you're like, well, look, and then you try to relate it to a situation, which just makes him look bad. So then he shuts down and doesn't hear
now
anything
he's mad.
you say.
Yeah.
Now he's just mad. But he doesn't understand when you say brand. He doesn't know what the hell that is. So you're talking Greek to him, and she comes in and just says the word Facebook, and he thinks, oh, you're great. And so she thinks this is her ticket, and she's got an agenda. I mean, like, it's just, but you can see the manipulation just in this story. And this is the same manipulation that's been going on since the beginning of time with this church.
And like, yeah, exactly. How is this anything that we see? If you're going to use scripture as your measuring stick, I don't see any of this in scripture. Even like, we have an example of like, okay, we got a bunch of poor people that we got to feed. All these orphans and widows need fed, and it's getting a little out of hand. We can't, do it all ourselves. We need someone to take on this ministry. Like, there was no like pitting people against each other in those situations or anything like that. It was like, who's going to be able to do the job the best for the kingdom? And so her and I are, we're walking on eggshells with each other. But I don't have a lot of bandwidth to really fight this battle because I am getting multiple phone calls a day from people with tech questions, with just random things. There was a man who went to our church before I even came to the church and apparently ran the soundboard. So in like 1999, this man ran the soundboard in the high school auditorium. And he found us online through COVID and was listening online and decided that our worship sounded like ass, which I agree it did. That was the bane of my existence because you're trying to mix audio for a digital stream in the room where...
Right, and you get one or the other.
Yeah, you can either... You're in the same room with the stuff. Like, that's why if you, like, think of, like, in movies. So if you're not familiar with, like, sound or anything like that, think of, like, in movies. When someone goes to record an album, they go in another room, and then in a completely separate room is where they're mixing it with the board and recording and all of those things. There's a reason they're separated from each other.
Yeah, there's a reason that that's set up for optimal sound quality. You're talking about mixing sound in a room that's not acoustically sound. Haha, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And so to mix, and this just speaks to the validity of how awful the acoustics are in that church and how the church is not designed for sound acoustics, because what you have to do to mix the sound in that church, that thing you have to do to get it to sound good in the building, you hear how
terrible
wonky,
it sounds. Yeah.
How wonky the settings that you have. Like, because it sounds great in the building, but when you're working on the soundboard, all the things that you would normally do as a sound person to mix sound, it's not that way. Like, you have your board wonky. Like, there's settings that you're like, this shouldn't be like this. It should actually be down here. Like, there's things that are just ass backwards wonky on the board. Well, guess what's getting put out in the feed? What's on the board?
Yeah.
So does it sound great in the building? Yes. But what you actually have mixed on the board sounds like garbage. But nobody in the building is hearing what's mixed on the board. But when you take your board and you feed it online, they get to hear how it's really mixed.
Yeah, no, exactly. So this guy calls Tom and he's like, hey, this sounds like ass. Who do you have mixing your sound? So Tom gives this grown man who I have never met a day in my life my personal cell phone number. This man calls at me and yells at me for 2 hours on the phone. And he's like, I've been mixing sound for decades and I did this, I was at the church for this many years and I did it in the high school auditorium and I was able to make it sound great. Yeah, because no one was recording it there.
Yeah.
No one was recording
building,
it.
Sir, it sounds great.
Yeah,
in the building.
It sounds freaking phenomenal if you come walk in the doors, but like, no, online it's trash. And so that was kind of my like, you know what, I am freaking done with this. So in an act of defiance, I sit down and I put out on YouTube a series of like 6 videos of the most common questions that people are calling and asking me. So when someone would call or text me, hey, I'm having trouble with this, I stopped answering the phone, first of all, for church people. And then they would text me. So I would just send them the link to the YouTube video that I made. Because I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And so a couple episodes ago, I talked about how, when we first shut down, I made a video of like, hey, here's how you tithe online. Here's how you navigate our new website to try to help people out, right? That video I made in the office, which you could go over to our Patreon and you could see like a side-by-side comparison of myself in these videos. And the funny thing is like the one I made in the office that day when COVID first happened, I didn't have makeup on, but like I had hope in my eyes and I was like, hey, this is what we're doing and everything. Then fast forward to literally a month later, I am making these videos set up in my house so I could plug directly into my router because everyone in Jesus are trying to use the same freaking Wi-Fi in my neighborhood and kids are trying to do online school and it's a nightmare. And so like you could see my house behind me. I have makeup on. Like I got myself ready to do this video and I look 100% defeated. Like I looked at that and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like I look like I've been through some stuff.
Yeah.
And so I put these videos out, and that was like, okay, this is going to take stuff off my plate. I don't have to spend hours on the phone, because then it would always turn into, like I said before, like, oh, we have this, tabby cat that keeps walking through the neighborhood. And I never realized that this tabby cat goes from house to house, and I watch all these people feed it. Well, I've been feeding this tabby cat thinking he had no home, and I've been watching him. Okay, well, that's great. How about you call, like, why don't all you old people call each other and have these conversations?
Yeah.
Like, you're so desperate for communication because you're stuck at home. Like, call each other. Why are you talking to me?
Yeah.
And so, I am like, this is gonna help take that off my plate. And then Charlotte comes to me, says, I was talking to Tom, and you've been working so hard. And ever since you've been hired, you have not gone on vacation. Well, no, ma'am. Partly because you're paying me like 42 cents an hour. So,
and I have to work all the times you go to the Bahamas. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, who do you think is running crap? Why
you had like 12 Caribbean vacations since I started working here, and I haven't had one.
Yeah. So I'm like, no. And she goes, we want you to take a weekend off. So this was her big olive branch, because I was overwhelmed and I tried to quit my job and everything.
I realized that I just got back from the Caribbean for 2 weeks, but why don't you go ahead and take a Sunday?
Yeah. So we want you are taking off. You're going to come in and do Thursday. Okay. But we have Sunday covered for you. So you are taking off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We do not want to see you back until Tuesday. Okay? It's COVID. What am I supposed to do?
Thanks. Everything shut down. You can't go nowhere. And if you can still fly somewhere, the process to get there is horrendous.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrendous at this
point. And keep in mind, my husband works in healthcare.
Yeah. What the hell? But thanks.
Yeah. He's overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed with everything. So the first weekend in May, I go to church that Thursday night. This is Bill Nye the Color Guy preaches. And this is, so leading up to this, Tom had been doing Thursday nights, but he was like prepping us for the guys are going to do this. The eldership guys are going to do this. So Bill Nye the Color Guy does the 7th of May. And so I go on vacation that weekend. And why I am on vacation that weekend, I go camping. Because what else is there? Like, where else am I going to go? It's COVID. So we go up to the mountains, and we go up. We love going to this little town called Red Feather. And so, like, when you're down in the town, like kind of where the lake is and everything, there's multiple lakes up there. But like, yeah, lots of lakes. But like,
I live there anyway.
So when you're down like in town and by the lakes and stuff, you have cell service. But when you drive up the mountain to like where we were camping at, like the free camping, like we weren't staying at like a campground because a lot of those were closed also, but there's like open space, right? So we had drove up the mountain to like all the open campgrounds. We didn't have any service up there.
Right.
So I'm camping, doing my thing. We decide we're going to go on a drive because we're going to go like drive and like look off this overlook at, this pretty scenery. So we drive, and to get there, you kind of have to like drive down almost into town, and then you go up another road and go back up the mountain another way. And so we are driving down, and as I didn't have my phone turned on our way there, but on our way back, I turned my phone on because I was going to check my email or something just to make sure, because I was having this like paranoid, like, oh my gosh, I need to check and make sure everything is going well and all of this stuff. So we're driving and we get to just where we barely have service driving back, and my phone is going off. Da-ding, 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 da-ding. It is going nuts. And it's all missed calls, voicemails, text messages from Brandi. And my text messages are like, call me, all caps, call me. Like, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I'm thinking like someone died. Right? So we get to this place where we could kind of like pull over and stop, and the kids get out and they're running around with the dog and stuff. And, so I call her and I'm like, what is going on? And she's like, they're going to make him a pastor. And I'm like, who? And she's like, Barry. And I'm like, what? And she's like, Tom said it in the office. Tom said it. Like, we were in the office and he was talking and he said he's going to be the next pastor. And I'm like, what? At this point, this man has never preached a sermon. He doesn't have a ministry. All he's doing is going through this men's eldership training Bible study thing with Tom. And so Brandi is freaking out because he is gonna be the next pastor.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.